Well, and the funny thing was, even in that context, I believe Ian is probably the most appropriate to talk about this. But Ian, shouldn't there be some ellipses in some of these quotes that are 6.5 hours apart?
Yeah, well, it's ridiculous because, if and his followers were like, "Oh, if you tried this argument in court, the judge like if I tried this in argument in court, I would just show my receipts for, hey, the beginning and the end of this is 6.5 hours apart, and then I'd sit down and watch." Because at that point, it's going to be the judge using the other lawyer as a punching bag, possibly literally, because like that's just ridiculous. I have seen, just as in one of my cases, there was actually another lawyer who actually did this with one paragraph and then another paragraph, and they dropped an intervening paragraph. And I will tell you, the judge interrupted my submissions. I'm arguing on this, and the judge is like, "Hold on, I'm just going to check this," and then checked, and then said, "Mr. Runkle, we'll come back to you."
Mhm.
And
Well,
it was a long time that they spent yelling at the other counsel, because I could tell the judge had thought that was really persuasive until they actually missed out that intervening paragraph basically said, this is completely bad reasoning and you shouldn't reason like this. So the
mhm.
judge was super annoyed. You can't do that. An ellipsis is appropriate to drop like an interjection. If you're just saying, "Oh, whoops, I dropped my drink midway through a sentence," you could ellipsis that out, no problem. But you can't ellipsis 6.5 hours. That's just
Well, you're beating the
this is
chat to the punchline, Ian. You're beating the chat to the punchline. You can't beat him to the punchline. Let him see the punchline. So there were some scary edits. There were some edits that took place in the darkness of the daylight hours.
Okay,
And this is what we
poetic.
this is what we now have. Like, oh, that's different than this thing. That's not the same. Huh.
Yeah. Well, and
Looks
even
yeah.
his amended thing is still misleading as heck, because you see how he gives that one timestamp? You can't give one timestamp for quotes that are 6.5 hours apart. Like it doesn't happen at that time. So come
Oh,
on,
No, we
Bouzy.
talked
so
about
yeah.
it.
This
Right? We
one's
do
my
what we
favorite. Like
do.
than you do in that voice. 6
6
hours
hours
later.
Yeah. So we talked about it. We do what lawyers do. We said, hey, that seems inaccurate. That's unfairly presented. Certainly in headlines, that's what we do every damn day, is we look at these things and say, hey, that maybe it might be technically correct with ellipses, maybe, but it's wildly misleading. And this is the guy charging at the front saying we need to stop misinformation and misleading information. It's so important that you need me to tell you about it and further legislation. And he's out there doing these very things. And he's fighting Ian on it. He's fighting Rob on it. You may have seen him on Twitter in the last, 90 minutes
I had to
fighting
hit
Rob about it.
the chat told me to refresh, and it's
Oh, it's more?
like that's why I was laughing for a second there.
The guy doesn't stop. He just
Look, I want to say this. Look, as someone who's been accused of being a tabloid grifter and various things by other folks that have talked to me, this dude is an impressive spotlighter of himself. He knows how to use the SEO. He knows how to use the various ways in order to get attention on these social media platforms. And I have to applaud him. You know what? I'm out here talking to people about the truth and about the seriousness with which these things should be considered. He's out there putting bullshit in people's ears, and he's getting attention for it. So you know what? He's getting the job done. And I good for you, man.
Do you see what he's up to on Twitter now with his attack on Nate?
I'm gonna pull it up. Because I keep hitting refresh.
It's really gross. It's really gross.
Yeah, I keep refreshing per the chat's recommendation, and every time I refresh, it makes me laugh more and more.
Let me tell you this, folks. Because I want you to know, first of all, that Rob, I love you, and I have never had a bad interaction with you a day in my life. Now that's a limited amount of time, right? We've only known each other for a few months, but I've had a lot of interactions with you. Would you say that's accurate?
I would say that's accurate.
I've had a lot of interactions with you. And I want folks to know that I haven't even heard Rob be upset about this. Behind the scenes, even, there's no pounding of tables. There is no piece of plywood that has been broken like the beds that Rob is famous for somewhere in a corner. There
I
is
don't think-
instead
I don't
only
think Rob owns plywood though. He's a
I
quality
do,
lumber
but
kind of guy.
It's
Look,
Baltic
whatever
birch and
Rob-
it's furniture grade.
whatever wood Rob wields is unimportant for this conversation, right? We can stop talking about Rob's wood at this point. What I'm saying is that he hasn't even expressed any consternation behind the scenes. This is, for the most part, amusing because
This is hilarious.
an individual. This is an individual that is going after people that are talking about facts. There's no ad hominems here. We think that he's very questionable with the attacks, and he's now going after a lot of the folks on YouTube. But for the most part, this is trying to get better information out there, and it's just kind of observing from a distance what might be described as a meltdown at this point, right? You are watching him melt down against multiple people that honestly are just looking at facts, public record facts. He's fighting against those with similar public records, but while at the same time calling other people toxic while exhibiting at bare minimum the exact same tactics that some folks on YouTube and platforms are using against him. So I don't want people to think that this is a firing squad. This isn't us attacking or harassing or anything like this. We want people to be informed. This is what has happened, and I want you guys to know, because you don't get to see the behind the scenes like I do, that the folks that I have seen kind of mentioned, referenced by the individual in question, they're taking it in stride. These are good folks, and you can believe that. You can depend on that. And that's what this is going to be going forward.